How are y'all doing this morning?
Great.
Tell your face. I'd like to pause for just a moment before I launch and invite us to send Anthony, the gentleman who's on duty this morning, a lot of love. Like you're loving the teddy bears. We got to send Anthony a lot of love. You who didn't see what was going on here earlier. Anthony couldn't get the screen down this morning, so he went and found something to help. So just take a moment now, close your eyes. Anthony's probably sitting in the office saying, thank God it worked. And from your heart, just send some great love to Anthony to bless him. He went beyond the call of duty this morning. Thank you, Anthony. And we want to bless a couple of folks in our faith community here, Lois Williams and Joyce Gammon. So close your eyes again. They're faithful people who trust the shepherd of their heart. And so today we know, Lois and Joyce, that your faith is drawing to you gorgeous blessings, that you feel the joy of Spirit in your heart and feel it surrounding you, comforting you, guiding you, lighting your mind with beautiful thoughts today as we send our love to you. Amen and amen. Anything else you want to talk about before? Well, we are in the second week of Advent. We have 2 Advent candles lit, and today we're talking about peace. So you might check your heart and see on a scale of 1 to 10 how much peace am I feeling right now. Hopefully more than maybe when you got up this morning with all of our great music and fellowship. Mary called me this week, and she was not a happy camper. She was so angry at her boss. Her boss had, after all of her work, in very strident tones, told her how wrong she had been about her perception of how to do the work with their client. So Mary was pretty undone, and her peace was all gone. She wanted to fight. She was ready to go in and tell her boss a few things. But she didn't. And that's what we're talking about today. She didn't. The great work of your life is to let go of strife and everything that erases your peace. It decreases your well-being, and it'll lead you down the wrong path. It stirs up and ruffles your emotions and offers you potions that will not work. Let them go. The goal of life is to give your best and live and let go of the rest. Trust God with it. And that's what we're exploring today. Are you ready?
Amen.
Then let's say, I'm in.
Amen.
Okay. So we're still in the series on the great work of your life. And the chapter that I've been working with, along with the idea of peace and the power of the month, is the chapter where Cope talks about walking by faith. Now, if you weren't walking by faith, what do you suppose you'd be walking by?
Yeah, that's fear.
That's one thing. Fear. Worry. So we have a choice. We either walk by faith or we walk by fear. Take your pick. There's nothing in the middle. Have you noticed? There's nothing in the middle between faith and fear. You're either happy, joyful, peaceful, kind, thoughtful, generous, lively, or some form of the masquerade that fears wear is the thought that you're holding. So the chapter is Walk by Faith. We're talking about peace here. When we walk by faith, surprising as it may seem to many, we find a peace that passes all understanding. The theme for December is life. And we're talking about the divine idea of life. Say, divine idea of life.
Divine idea of life.
Yeah, because there are other forms of life, aren't there, other than the divine idea? Let me hear you say yes.
Yes.
The divine idea of life is the idea of creativity itself. Life is always seeking to create in and through us. It is the idea of vitality. It is life in action expressing divine ideas. Say divine ideas.
Divine ideas.
Yeah, we're all aware of the other ideas, aren't we? Read this with me, although, our screen is a little crinkled. Let's read what it says. Creating a life that reflects your values and satisfies your soul is a rare achievement. It is a rare achievement, but it's something that we're called to. It's the call of our life. So the title for today is What the Soul Values. What the Soul Values. And what you can't read because our screen isn't long enough is the Christ presence in me is unfailingly resilient. Let's try that together. The
Christ presence in me is unfailingly resilient.
So what does that tell you? You can always bounce back. When? When you remember the Christ presence and tap into it, the life of Christ within us. We can bounce back. It may take a while, but we can always bounce back because that power is within us. Well, the Christmas story has a mixed bag about divine ideas and life. So I'm going to share two scripture passages with you. One is from Matthew, and I wanted to bring it today because we're talking about peace. And this is from Matthew chapter 2. Matthew chapter 14. Matthew represents a surrendered will. So sometimes during Christmas time, I don't know about you, but I'd like it my way rather than what I'm looking at. Matthew represents, nevertheless, I accept what is, and I bring my peace and the Christ presence to it. So here we are. Jesus had just fed the 5,000. He sends the disciples in a boat out of the cross. He says, I'll meet you on the other side. And while they were out there, you may remember this story, while they were out there, the winds got really strong and the waters got stirred up and they were coming in the boat and the disciples' peace was all gone. And they thought, this is the end. We're going to drown. Have you ever felt like that? The circumstances in my life, they're going to make me drown right now.
Yes.
Yeah. So the disciples in this boat are thinking that it's all over. And they can't even think straight because their fear is clouding their thinking and ruffling their heart. When you and I are in upset, we can't think straight, can we? We can't even see the next right step. So the water represents our consciousness. And when it's stirred up by the winds, the strong winds of challenging circumstances, it's a ripe condition for worry and fear. In the scene, however, Jesus comes walking on the water. And Peter, who represents faith, looks out there and is encouraged. Hey, I wonder if I can, the Lord, is it you? Yeah, it's Peter gets out of the boat, and he's doing great, walking on the water of the circumstances. The waves are not bothering him. He's on top of it. His thinking is on top of it. And so he dares to look down, and what happens? He puts his focus on the circumstance and he starts sinking. So as we go out into our week today, go out into our day to remember that we have the power within us to stay on top of whatever the winds are like, whatever the circumstances are, if we get back to the Christ presence within and start looking for a divine idea. Now to the Christmas story. So you saw in that story how Peter's and all the disciples' emotions were ruffled. Right? Fear ruffles our emotions and offers us potions that are poison to the soul. Same thing happened in the Christmas story. When the angel announces to Mary that she is pregnant, Scripture says precisely, "Hail, O favored one, the Lord is with you." But Mary was greatly troubled at that saying. Greatly troubled. Joseph was not thrilled when he found out she was pregnant, and his peace was undone. Oh my God, what's going to become of us? What's going to become of me? What are people going to think? Couldn't think clearly. His soul was troubled. However, in both cases, they paused and said, nevertheless, be it done unto me according to thy word, is what she said to Gabriel. Can you remember the last time you said that? Nevertheless, Lord, thy will, not mine, be done. So this is something to remember today, because as soon as our will starts fighting what is, all peace is gone. All peace. So I thought, well, let me share a couple of stories. One of them is the story of Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman. How many of you know that name? If you read the book or you're reading the book, you know the name. And we all probably can remember it from our history class. But Harriet Tubman is the subject in the book that Cope writes about when he wants to talk about walking by faith and what the soul values. So Harriet Tubman was a slave. Her parents were slaves. And somewhere in her, there was a tipping point where she said, I'm not doing this anymore. And she ran for her life. She ran for life. Somehow, the life of the divine spark in her flamed up. And she had the courage, the faith, to run for her life. And they were after her. Once she got to safety, the dawn came, and she found a purpose for her life that was greater than herself. She found that she was called to rescue other slaves. And so she risked her life day after day to walk by faith, to value life and peace that cannot be had in any kind of slavery. Well, whether it's enslavement to an attitude, a perception, a habit, we can't find peace and walk by faith if we're in that kind of enslavement. Whether it's internal or external, right?
Right.
The next story is what we've all been hearing about in the news. Now, I want you to promise me something. Well,
Yes.
oh, you gotta hear what it is first. I'm gonna come and stand by you, Jack. Promise me that you will not listen to what I'm about to say to you and think I'm making a political statement. Raise your hand and say, I promise. George H.W. Bush. A remarkable man who at 18 years old, when he didn't have to, signed up and went into the Army. He was flying missions. The number is 52 that they quote. Did any of you watch his funeral on TV? I watched it on YouTube. Here was a remarkable man who put God first, very clearly. Divine values first. God first, family second, and service third. He joined the armed forces out of a sense of service. You see, this is something the soul values greatly, being in service to a cause that's greater than ourselves, that's beyond what I want for Christmas. He was bipartisan, as it was described. He was a man of great integrity. The soul values those things. The soul values accepting differences in people who aren't like us. The soul values that kind of integrity. I say what I believe what I say, and I do what I say I'm going to do. I live by my values even when I don't want to. This is what the soul values, that kind of integrity. And he certainly had his challenges, and yet he was still devoted to his wife of how many years? 73 years. Yeah. So the soul values walking by faith, living in peace, serving in gratitude, and living fully alive. Living fully alive. So are you ready to walk by faith this week?
Yes.
It wasn't unanimous.
Yes.
Are you ready to live in peace even when the winds start to blow and the waters churn up?
Yes.
My friend Mary went into her boss the next day, and she had settled the waters of her mind. And she walked in faith, having contacted the divine presence within her. And she invited her boss to trust her and be patient with her. And her boss apologized. When we live by what our soul values, the highest values that we know, life somehow works out. Jump up. I mean, these are affirmations. Okay, with great vigor, filled with life, vitality, enthusiasm. The more spiritually fit I am, the more alive I become. I put my faith into action, and my soul finds peace. I do what my soul values, and my life becomes valuable, and I bless myself and my